This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Vav, and we're holding on the top line of Ayin Vav, Amid Aleph. I'm going to apologize before we start. I already see that we're going to have some video issues. We are trying to work on the limp sync issues. Hopefully we will figure out the problem sooner than later. I apologize. And again, anyone who's around Sunday night, I do hope to see you. Bellworks, an incredible siyum, chizik, tehillim for all of us. And we pick it up on the top line. Ayin Vav Amid Aleph. My Darshi. We're in the middle of discussing a fascinating sugya of the kusim. We've been discussing, are they kusim gerayisheim? Are they kusi gerayemesheim? And within that discussion is the mistakes that the kusim made. And we spoke about the fact that they messed up with regard to Yibum, that they learned that Yibum is only from Erisin and not if there was Nisuin, which of course is backwards. Yibum is only if there was actually Nisuin and not Erisin. Says the Gemara on the top line of Ayin Vav and Aleph, and again, I apologize for the lack of video. I do really hope to try to figure out why this is happening. I don't know. We're running into technological glitches. My Darshi, says the Gemara. Let's hope that the Torah works, even if the video does not. My Darshi, what are the Kusin Darshin? That is the pasuk with regard to Yibum, and the Kusim misdarshined the pasuk. Says the Gemara, Hach di yasvi chutza, he loitia lishzar. The Kusim darshin that what? A one who is yasvi achutza, one who literally lived outside, meaning one who did not yet fully enter into the inside, did not fully undergo nisuin, loitia lishzar, should not be to a ishzar, a strange man, literally. Why? Because she has to do Yibum. So again, one who did not fully consummate the marriage with Nisu and only did Erisin, she is the one that has Yibum, says the Kusim. However, this one who did not go outside, meaning, but she did Nisu and she's fully inside, fully with her husband, Tia Lishzar, there's no din of Yibum. She's allowed to be with an Ishzar, she's allowed to be with anyone else after her husband dies. That's the mistake that the Kusim made. Rav Akiva, l'taimei da'amar yesh mamzer chayvei lavin. And Rav Akiva, what does he hold? He holds that a mamzer comes for any time there is chayvei lavin. And therefore, according to Rav Akiva, even though the Kusim were indeed Geiri Amese, they were indeed true Gerim, they were full-fledged Yidden. However, because they made this mistake, and therefore they married Mamzerim, that's the reason why the Kusim were forbidden to the Yidden. That's a second shot as to why the Kusim are usher to Lavai Bikal, usher to marry a regular Yisrael. The Yesh Aimrim continues the Gemara with a third shot, says 6 lines down, Ayin Vav Amid Aleph, says the Gemara, what is a third reason? Lefishein bekiyin bedikduke mitzvahs. Because the kusim were not bekiyim, were not proficient, were not precise with the dikduke mitzvahs, with all the fine details of all the mitzvahs. Says the Gemara, man yeshayimrim. Who is this third opinion who holds that the kusim did not follow all the mitzvahs entirely? Amar Avidi Baravin, Rabbi Eliezer he. This is Rabbi Eliezer the Tanya, as we learned in a brayso. Matas kusi muteres v'adam yotzidei chavasei b'Pesach. Says the Tanakama, for kusi as matzah, you're allowed to use that matzah on Pesach. However, Rabbi Eliezer oiser. Says Rabbi Eliezer, no. You're not allowed to use the matzah bakusi. Why? Lefishein bekiyem bedikduke mitzvahs. Because the kusim were not bekiyim, were not proficient, were not precise, were not scrupulous, were not meticulous with all the fine nuances of mitzvahs. Rashbag Omer says the Shimon Gamliel, a third opinion about kusim. Kol mitzvah shechziku bakutim. Harbe medaktikim yoiser me Yisrael. whatever the kutim, whatever they were medaktikin on. It's true, says Rashbag, the kusim did not follow all the mitzvahs. But that which they did even more than the regular Yidden did. Says the Gemara, Ve'elahachi ma'ein bikin. So now, with regard to Yuchasin, which is our discussion whether you can marry a Kusin, Kuti, ma'ein bikin. What is the detail that the Kusim were not Bikiyim in, that thereby led that we are not allowed to have a regular Yisrael marry a Kuti? Says the Gemara, Lefish ein Bikiyin, B'Tairas Kiddushin v'Gerushin. They were not Bikiyim with all the laws of Kiddushin and Gerushin, and therefore they were not performed the appropriate Gittin. And if you don't have a get that someone was married, then ensuing is what? Ensuing is an Ishes Ish, a married woman getting remarried. Ensuing is a calamity, a disaster. And that is the reason why we, the Yidden, the Yisraelim, will not marry the Kutim. And finally, now, those were the three reasons why the Yisraelim would not get involved with the Kusim. But now, the question is, what about the Kusim marrying each other? That's the next stage. As we're about to see, the Kusim were not even married within each other. Why? Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Ravua, Mamzer me'achaisa, Mamzer me'ishes ach, nes'arvu bahen. The Kusim would have times that a mamzer from one sister or a mamzer from an Ishes Ach would get mixed in with the Kusim, and therefore, even within the Kusim, they would not marry each other. My Kamashlan says, what's the Chiddush? Yesh mamzer machayve krisus. The Chiddush is, the chayve krisus, marrying one sister, it creates a mamzer, and that's the reason why the Kutim would not marry each other. Says the Gemara, beautiful. So neiti chado. So to say one time, why does it say me'ishes ach and me'achais? Why does it say both me'achais and from ishes ach? Let's list one case. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ma'isa shaya kachaya. It was a story that happened, and that's why we listed both cases. That was Rav Nachman Amar Ravua. Rav Amar Eviv v'shivchan es arbu behen. No, the Ravadim, servants and maidservants that were mixed in with the Kutim. That is the reason why they would not marry each other. Nisarvu behen isura mishamai misham shivcha. So nesi chada. So says the Gemara. So why are we listing both cases? Why are we listing again an eved and a shivcha? Just say either an eved or a shivcha. It's the same yisoid. Says the Gemara. Ma'isa shahaya kachaya. That was the story. Punkt. That was the ma'isa. That's the reason why we listed both of them, and that concludes the sugya of Kutim, again, starting with the foundational machlekes that we have all over Shas, whether Kutim are Geri Arayis or Geri Emes, whether they were full-fledged Yidden or not, and ensuing in the different mistakes that the Kutim made, ensuing in the opinions that no, they were actually full-fledged Yidden, followed by the opinion that held that which they were meticulous on, they were fully meticulous, Rashbag, and ultimately the Gemara concluded with understanding why they would not even marry each other because of the mistakes that they made. And now we continue after learning many daf of this fourth parak of Asar Yochsin, dealing with the Yuchsin, the genealogical potential issues within Klal Yisrael, and how careful one must be to marry one with appropriate ichos. Says the Mishnah now towards the bottom half of Ayin Vav and Aleph, Ha'anoise Isha, someone who wants to marry a woman. And now we're dealing with the lechatchila. You want to marry a noise isha kaihanes. You want to marry a woman who is a kaihanes, the daughter of a kain. So what do? After everything is said and done, now we want to understand the lechatchila to make sure that this woman is a kosher woman. Says the Mishnah, Sarich livdek achareho arba himahis shein shemaina. You want to check into this girl, 4 of her mothers, we'll see what that means, which in reality is 8 mothers. These 8 people will ascertain and confirm that this girl is indeed a bas kohen and she's kosher. Who are the 8 people? Ima ve'em ima. You check in her mother and her grandmother, her mother's mother. Ve'em avi ima. And then you check into the mother of her mother's father. and Ve'ima, and her mother, going up one more generation. Ve'ima Avia, her father's mother. Ve'ima, and her mother. Ve'im Avi Avia, and the mother of her father's father. Ve'ima, and her mother. So those are the 8 people that you ascertain are ksherim. Then you can marry this girl and assume that she's indeed a bas kayin, like she claims. Continues the Mishnah. Now, just to point out, there is a large machlokes as to who is the subject of the Mishnah. We're dealing with a man who wants to marry this girl. Are we dealing with a kayin particularly? Are we dealing with any yid? Big machlokes rishonim, different nuances proving either way. Rashi learning pashtos, talking about any yid, but let's leave it at that. Continues the Mishnah. Levia v'Yisraelis. That's if someone wants to marry a bas kayin. What if someone wants to marry a daughter of a Levi Yisraelis? Says the Mishnah, you got to check even more. Moisifin alehen oid achas. You have to add on one more. What does one more mean? One more means, Pashas, another 4. Another 4 mothers to ascertain that this girl is indeed a Bas Levi or a Bas Yisrael. But now the Mishnah concludes that there are certain scenarios, there are certain occurrences, certain actions that people do that prove without a shadow of a doubt that this person is a kosher. Says the Mishnah, if we know that there's a person that he serves on the Mizbeach, he's a kayin, from that person, that shows that there is a check, absolute. That means that whole line of lineage is kosher. You don't have to check any further. So you're going up 4, you're going up 8, you're going up 12 mothers. If at any point you find that there's a kayin that is known to serve in the Mizbeach, that's an absolute kshera. Continues the Mishnah, similarly, if you know that there's a kayin, that is a Levi, that ascended the duchen to sing, play the instruments in the Beis Hamikdash. Similarly, if it's known that one of the parents is a shaitrei rabbanon, one of the public officials, a charity collector, and the Gemara is going to explain what's so special about these jobs. Masiyan lekuna, you can marry for kuna. Ve'ein tzarich lives like achra. You don't have to check any further. Rav Yosi Aimer Af Mi Sheyachaisim Aid Ba'archei Yeshana Shal Tzipayri, one who signed as an aide in the old court of there means the old court, so the court of old of Yeshana and Tzipayri. Rav Chanina ben Atignis Aimer Af Mi Sheyam Muchtav Be'is Tarzia Shamelech, one who was written as a soldier in the king's army as well. The king would only employ those with good lineage. Also proves that such person is a kosher and does not have to check any further. And now we continue by beginning the Gemara, the bottom half of Ayin Vav Amud Aleph. Clearly, the first half of the Mishnah taught us that who are you checking? We said you're checking 4 mothers, which is 8 mothers, and maybe even 12 mothers. Clearly, you're checking mothers. You're not checking fathers. Why? Explains the Gemara, Nashi, woman, when women get into a fight, they say bad things about the other person in Inyani Arayis, that they were unfaithful to their husband, that they were doing certain inappropriate things. That's how women taunt each other. And therefore, Vimisa, Tika Milsa, Layas Lekala. And therefore, what do we know about this woman's yichos, about her lineage? Nothing. So if there would be something about her, we wouldn't necessarily hear about it. On the flip side, and this will really bring out the Yisaid, Gavri, when men fight, the Chiminsu Bade Adadi, 8 lines from the bottom, they fight about Yichasin. Emisa, Dika Milsa, if there was something wrong with this guy, if he had an issue with his yichos, everyone would know about it. Therefore, there's no need to check the yichos of the fathers. Asks the Gemara, V'ihi enami tivdai gabei b'didei. She as well should check him. The whole Mishnah was the husband checking into the yichos of the woman. Asks the Gemara, I don't understand. She, the wife, should do the similar checks. Explains the Gemara, Messiah the Rav, this is a proof to the Heilig Rav, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, 4 lines on the bottom of Ayin Vav and Aleph. Lo Yuzharu Ksheirois, Li'nasei Lipsulim. Ksheirois, the woman, the girls, the females were not warned about marrying Psulim. They do not have to be worried. It is the guy's job to worry that he marries a Ksheira, but it's not her to worry that she has to marry one that is kosher. Rav Adam Barava Tani says, Rav Adam Barava, let me teach you a brisa which seems to be at odds with our Mishnah. Says Rav Adam Barava, Daladi Mohis, you have to check for a mother, Shem Shtei Masrei, which is 12 mothers. B'masnita Tanan, there's a different brisa that says, Daladi Mohis Shein Shisha, so which is 16. And what did our Mishnah say? Daladi Mohis Shein Shmaina. So says the Gemara, the first opinion which says 4, which is 12. We can explain Rav Ada Barava how as we turn over to Ayin Vav Amid Beis Mukim Labalavia Ubas Yisrael. We can say the Bryce is referring to a Levia Ubas Yisrael, which we explained requires another generation to check another 4 people equaling 12. Elabimasnita. But the Mishnah name of Pliga, seemingly it's arguing the Mishnah said 8. Actually, the Bryce said 16, and our Mishnah said 8. Answers the Gemara on the second line of Ayin Vav and Beis Loi. My oir achas zug achas. Answers the Gemara when our Mishnah said that for a Levi and Yisraelis you have to go up oir achas, one more level, which we translated to mean another 4 mothers equaling 12. Says the Gemara, no, it meant zug achas, a pair of mothers equaling 16, and therefore the brisa is not at odds with our Mishnah. Continues the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, 3 lines down, Ayin Vav and Beis. Zo divrei Rameir. That which we learned is Shittas Rameir, Aval Chachamim, Hoimrim Kol, Mishpachos Bechezkas Kasher, Zein Hoimrim, Hoimdois. Says the Chachamim, you don't have to check everyone. There's a Chazaka. A normal person has a Chezkas Kasher. If, as we'll see in a moment, if there's a potential error, if there's a potential shmua, if people are saying that maybe the person is not kosher, then ain't achanam, you would have to check. But if there's no reason to suspect, say the chachamim, you don't have to check anything. Ask the Gemara, Amy, is that true? Our Mishnah is kishaykayra Allah error. Our Mishnah is when there was an investigation, an error that people were saying that there was an issue. Says the Gemara, two different authors of the Mishnayos, of the memories. Another pshat, but the Chachamim, that's only if there's no error. But if there's an error, if people are saying that there might be an issue, then Sarach Levdaik Acha Rel. So 2 different fundamental ways of learning our sugya. Whether in all scenarios you have to check it to the person, or whether only if there is an error. We continue 2 lines from the wide lines in Ayin Vav and Beis. And again, I apologize for the lack of a video. B'siyata d'shmaya, I really am trying to figure this out. Says the Gemara, we cannot check from the Mizbeach and upward. My taima, what's the reason? Explains the Gemara, loved about Kua, Loi have maskile. You know why? Because if they never checked into the person, they would never let them serve in the Mizbeach, and therefore that's an ironclad proof that the person must be kosher. On the first wide line, my taima, what's the reason? Damar Mar says Mar Shesham Hayoyoshim Yachse Kahuna Yachse Levia. Those who ascended the Duchen were only those with good yichus. My time, what's the reason on the third wide line? Just like Bezin is Menuka is cleaned with righteousness, so too we make sure they're all Tamid Chachamim, so too we make sure there's no mum, we make sure they're all miyuchas. Amar Meimar Maikra, what's the pasuk that we learned this out from? We're on the 4th wide line of Ayin Vav Beis. Says Mereimar, where did we learn this from? From the following pasuk. Kulach Yafa Rayasi Umom Ein Bach. Your Yafa Rayasi is complete. Kulach, completely beautiful. Umom Ein Bach, and there's no mum. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? Ema Muma Mamish. Maybe it's referring to a full, a regular mum. Who's to say that this is referring to Yochsin? Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Amar Kra, V'siyatzru Sham Imach, says the pasuk that the Dayanim, that the Sanhedrim are there standing with you, Moshe Rabbeinu, and we darshan Imach with you, B'daimim Lach, similar to you. Asks the Gemara, V'tamim Misham Shechina. Maybe that's only because they were by the Shechina by Moshe Rabbeinu, but in a regular Sanhedrin, not. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Kra, that the Dayanim that were created by Moshe Rabbeinu were to lighten the load, and from there we darshan b'daim and lach, similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, we know that they are naki, that they are miyuchas. And we continue, we're an eighth wide line, the two dots on Ayin Vav and Beis. Anyone that the father was muchzak, that they were part of the shaitri rabbanim, public officials. Does that mean that a public official was always kosher? Anyone is allowed to be a judge. We pondered. What's it coming to include that they're all kosher? It's coming to include that a mamzer is allowed to be a judge. So why are you telling me if someone is involved in dinei mamzer, he's a public official, that means he's a kosher? But we just saw on a brayso that he's allowed to be a mamzer. Rav Shimon bar Zera bekedushay dveirat Levi beYerushalayim. Continues the Gemara v'gabei tzedakah ma'asiyim. My time what's the reason that gabei tzedakah explains the Gemara similar to something we saw in Amar Aleph. Given Atzubuah the inchi, because the Gabei Tzedakah, unfortunately, is posed with a difficult job. At times he has to call people to task, he has to fight with them. Tamar Mar, what do we learn in Mashchinim al Tzedakah v'afilu b'Erev Shabbos? Sometimes, in order to enforce the ruling of a bezdin, if someone doesn't pray the appropriate tzedakahs, we take a mashkin, we take a security from the person, even at Erev Shabbos, and obviously the person is not going to be happy. Vim Isa, and therefore Dika Islay call. And if there was something about a person, there would be a call as someone who is involved with people on a difficult level. People will talk about him, and therefore, if there's not, that shows that he is miyuchas, that shows that he is a kosher. Continues the Gemara with a story. Ashvazinchu the Ravada Barava Giura Hava. The Ashvazinchu, the host of Ravada Barava, was a ger. Vavikamansi Iu Vravibi Bar. And he, this Bezincha, the host, who was from Gerim, was fighting with Rav Bibi. Mar Amar once said, Anavidna, Sararusa de Masa, I'm going to run the town. Omar Amar, and the other said, Anavidna, this is true, the Masa, I'm going to run the town. Also, committed Rav Yes, came from Rav Yes, Amar Leho, Tanina Tabraisa, Saim Tazim Alecha Melech, Melech, Karabachicha. And from here we learn now, Kol Misima Shatamesim, all appointed officials, Lo Ya'ela Mikarev Achicha, all appointed officials have to be Mikarev Achicha, have to be one who's a proper brother, and therefore, since the Shbezincha, since the host came from Gerim, he can't be. Amrle Ravada Barava, so Ravada Barava says, Afilu Yima Mi Yisrael. Is this true, even if his mother is a Yisrael? Amrle Rav Yosef responds, Ima me Yisrael mikarev achicha karina bay. If his mother is from Yisrael, if his mother is from Yisrael, then we call him karev achicha. Helkach, therefore, what was the pshar they made? Rav Bibi, the Gavar Rabbi, Rav Bibi, Lamais was big with Tamachacham. Havalanim Mili Deshmai, he dealt with the Mili Deshmaya, he dealt with all the ruchliest matters in the town. Umar, Layin B'Mili Demasa, and the host, which Lamais they found that he is considered a kosher, dealt with all the practical monetary matters. And Amar Abaye says, Abaye, you know, we learn out from here, Helkach, Man Demashi, certainly Rabbanan B'Shazincha, La Ashri. If you have a Surbat Rabbanan as a guest, La Ashrei Kravade Barava, you should take in a guest like Ravada Barava, the Adam Havach Bebzechute, because he knows how to argue. He were the one able to come up with the Bishara that everyone walked away agreeable in such a story. Rav Zera Metabel Behu, similarly Rav Zera would deal with all the appointed officials very appropriately. Rava Baravua Metabel Behu B'Marava Afilu Reish Kuri Loy Mukmi Minayu B'Marava in Eretz Yisrael, even the Reish Kuri, even the inspector of weights, they would not appoint. They didn't appoint even to positions of the irrigators. We see that appointed officials are not just a mere menial task, not just a job that unfortunately doesn't receive enough recognition. We see from the Gemara that Lamaisa is something to be held in a high esteem, and to make sure that the appointed official be one that is indeed a kosher. Rav Yaisi Amar Misha Hayam, with this we're going to conclude. Says Rav Yaisi, even one who signed as an aide in certain Bati Dinim is allowed to marry a Koyanis Maitaima, Daiki, Umachatmi. The reason is because they would look into the Eidim very carefully before they allowed them to sign. Rav Chanina ben Antignis concluded that if one is a soldier in the army, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, this is referring to B'chayolos, a Beit Shal Beis David, the army in the house of David. Amar Rav Yosef Ma'ikra, what's the pasuk that we see this from? V'Yachsham Bitzva B'Milchama, that their yichos were traced in the army. V'Taimamai, what's the reason? Why was David HaMelech particular that only those with good yichos could be soldiers? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Kedei she'yizechutan u'schos avoisa misayotan. We want their schos and the schos of their fathers to help them during battle. It's difficult battle. We need schosim. Nowadays, what more do we need? The schosim for kol ha'chinigo beis Yisrael. So David HaMelech ensured that even the soldiers were miyuchas. Ask the Gemara of Eika Seleka Amaini. What about Seleka Amaini? My love, it sounds like Dasi Me'amain. It certainly wasn't miyuchas. Says the Gemara, Lo, the Yosef Amain doesn't mean he lived there, but indeed he was a full-fledged Yid. Avikor Yachiti. My love, Dasi Meches. Lo, the Yosef Meches, he just lived there. Avika iti agiti. There was iti agiti. V'chite malchanami diaseh v'gas. He just lived there. V'amar Rav Nachman, 4 lines to the bottom. Iti agiti ba'u ba'atzla. But Rav Nachman taught that iti agiti came and was mevatel the avodah zara that David HaMelech took. So from there, what Rashi not Rashi, the Mefarshim explain that Iti Agiti was, from the fact that it says that he was mevatel via avodah zara, shows that he was allowed to have some level of benefit for the avodah zara, which seemingly proves that he wasn't a yid. And furthermore, asked the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Arba Meos Yiladim Hayilu David V'Kulam B'nei Yifas Taya are you? David HaMelech had 400 young children in the army, and they were all children of Yifas Taya. V'Kulam, and all of them Mistabrim. Kumi Magdalim Belurius are you? And all of them had their hair cut short in the front, and they had their hair long, Belurius in the back. And all of them, Kulam Yasha B'Kreinish Shalzav, they sat in carriages of gold, and they were at the head of the troops. These were referred to the strong men of the army of David. And these people were the children of Yifas Tayers, meaning they weren't Yidden. And yet they served in the army of David HaMelech, says the Gemara, the Azli L'Biyusa Ba'alma. They were just there to have power in numbers to frighten the enemy, but they weren't actually fighters in the army of David. As David HaMelech ensured that only those with Yichasin were fighters. We'll pick it up from Daf Ayin Zayin in the Mishnah the next year of Siyata Dishmaya.